Hi, I'm Gully.
I'm Nuala.
And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about Project 3.5, which we've been working on for Extinction Rebellion for the past 6 months or so. Before we get into that, I just want to take a second to imagine something together. In 2003, 2 million people flooded the streets of London to protest the Iraq War. Now, sadly, we know how that panned out. But take a second to think what might have happened if those 2 million people had sat down in the road and refused to move. If instead of going home that day, they had said, no, I'm not going back to business as usual, not going back to my job, I'm not going to keep my head down and keep quiet. I'm not going to move from this spot until the government engages with my demand. Now, Extinction Rebellion was founded on a really simple theory of change. And theory of change is jargon. It basically means the plan which we think is going to win. That theory of change says that when roughly 3.5% of a population is actively engaged in a resistance movement, that's roughly when the government is going to be forced to respond. And that doesn't mean we think 3.5% is the magic number. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to translate precisely to our context here in the UK. Doesn't mean that we think any of this is going to be easy. But when you boil it all down, all that means is that we believe in people power. And Extinction Rebellion does believe in that. That's what we're founded on. The belief that a mass amount of people taking action together in the streets, demanding action from the government that we elected, can make change. So people power has been shown throughout history to work, and we've seen it for ourselves. In 2019, about 10,000 of us flooded the streets of London, shut down parts of central London for around 10 days, put a pink boat in Oxford Circus, among other things. 2 weeks later, the UK Parliament became the first in the world to declare a climate emergency.
This House must declare an environment and climate emergency. We have no time to waste.
That's just because 10,000 of us, which is a fraction of 3.5% of the population, made ourselves impossible to ignore. We said we're not going home until you negotiate with us. So we've seen it works, we just need more people. 3.5% of the UK population is over 2 million people. And that seems like a huge number, seems daunting, but it's not impossible. And even if it was impossible, we would try anyway, because we have to.
So why is civil resistance so much more effective than armed struggle? The answer seems to lie in people power itself. Researchers used to say that no government could survive if just 5% of its population rose up against it. Our data show that the number may be lower than that. No single campaigns failed during that time period after they'd achieved the active and sustained participation of just 3.5% of the population.
Like Gully said, in the UK, 3.5% of our population is over 2 million people. But what we're looking for is a trigger number that will bring that 3.5% out onto the streets. And we know from Erica Chenoweth's research that a large part of that 3.5% join when they can feel that there's a moment happening. So it's like all those people who say to themselves, when the moment comes, I'll stand up for what's right. It's signalling to them that moment has arrived.
Not everybody wants to take the same chances in life, and many people won't turn up unless they expect safety in numbers. The visibility of many civil resistance tactics like protests allow them to draw these risk-averse people into the fray.
And I think it's fair to say that the conditions for this work are ripe. Levels of climate concern in the UK are reaching record highs, and people understand that the government might say all the right words, but they actually don't have a plan. And add to that the fact that increasing numbers of people across the UK can't afford to pay their basic bills. And you have a situation where people understand that our mode of politics and the way that we organise our economy doesn't work for them.
The worst is yet to come. The Bank of England believes the squeeze on our living standards will be so severe that it's forecasting a recession in all but name.
We've talked about this figure of 2 million people, but we've also talked about a trigger number. So what if we set ourselves the goal of a trigger number of 100,000 people? Then we give ourselves the potential to bring millions onto the streets, to activate millions of people. And so with that in mind, we've made a plan, and that plan is scalable, it's repeatable, and it's fun. And door knocking works precisely for those reasons, because it's enjoyable and it's rewarding. It allows it to scale because people want to do it.
Every street is a quality street. Which flavour are you going to get next? The friendly one, the impatient one, or...
Hello.
It's already happening. We've been doing this since January, and it's working. You've got 5,000 conversations that have happened around the UK already, from Teesside to rural West Cornwall. You've got over 100 UK local groups already out knocking on doors. In the run-up to Rebellion, XR Exeter mobilised 200 new people in 3 months. Like during the Rebellion in London, we had 90 new people at a single talk. So we can do this. We just need to get organised and we need to get to work.
Yes, so I'm going to talk you through that work in a bit more detail. Just briefly, I'm going to talk you through the method that we're using. It's really simple. We're not reinventing the wheel purposefully. It's supposed to be simple so that 3,000 people can easily pick it up and run with it. And they are across the country. And local groups are innovating this method all the time and making it work for them, which is amazing. So step 1 is the outreach. Typically we're knocking on doors. And it's really important that step 1 happens really close to where the talk, which is step 2, is going to be held. So when you're choosing the venue for the talk, you then do door knocking in the streets immediately surrounding that venue. That's because everything we're doing in 3.5 is hyper localized. So we're knocking on the door and all we're doing is having a conversation. Like, we're not going there to tell you anything. We're not lecturing you. We're really listening. That's the basic part of it, is connecting with people in our local communities and getting to know them and asking what is worrying them, how scared they are about the climate crisis. Do they think the government is doing a good job? So we're building that actual human connection with our neighbours, which is revolutionary in itself, having conversations about the climate crisis, which we're not doing often enough at all. And we are inviting them to join us. So we have a really simple ask on the doorstep. Join us at a talk down the road next week or whenever it is. So the fact that it's hyper-local removes that barrier to entry. It's just down the road. Step 2 is the talk. And this is not the Heading for Extinction talk. It's something new that's been written for Project 3.5 with a new context in mind. This new context being the fact that we're no longer trying to educate so much on the crisis. We're now really trying to get people to do something about it. So it's much shorter. We spend no more than 15 minutes explaining the crisis. And in those 15 minutes, again, we're not using lots of hard, cold facts. We are basing it, again, on human connection and emotion. And then we get to the good stuff, which is our plan to win. So we explain Project 3.5 like we're doing now. We explain our target of mobilising 100,000 people into action. And then we invite them to take on a role there and then. Because again, the research shows that a key part of keeping people engaged is giving them a task and a responsibility and the trust and the accountability to keep that, to deliver on that task. So we invite people in the room to commit to something there and then. And that can be anything from, I have a couple of hours a week to go door knocking with you, all the way through to, I'm going to take on a full-time role in a national circle and everywhere in between. Step 3 is the all-important integration step. And this will look differently for local groups depending on your context and what's going on, if you have a local campaign or anything like that. But the key part of it is we do a follow-up call with that person 1 to 2 days after the talk. So it's really quick after the talk and it's personalised again, based in listening again, building that human connection. What did you think of the talk? What did you commit to doing? How can I support you? What do you want to do next? So those are the 3 steps. As Nuala said, they're built to be cyclical and scalable, and groups all across the country are having success with it as we speak.
People got the power.
Since Extinction Rebellion started, we've become experts at direct action and disruptive tactics. But now, if we're really serious about testing our theory of change, if we really believe in people power, we need to become experts at mobilising. The tools are there, the method is here, it's been worked on, it's being used right now by local groups all around the country. But we need more people, we really need your help, let's get on with it.
Let's do it.